and or put the questions in the chat, and then when I present, Doris will manage the questions, and when Doris presents, I will manage the questions. Okay. All right, so if no questions, let's go ahead and get started. And let's go ahead and go to the next slide, Doris. So here is what we hope you will know by the end of the session, basically who are dreamers and what they bring to businesses and organizations. It's important to us to have a common language and to know how we can promote dreamers to potential employers. Second one is how to support those dreamers that have DACA and TPS. They have work authorization, they have certain opportunities and also challenges that are specific to them being employed. But then the third thing is, as we know, some of our dreamers do not have DACA or TPS and therefore do not have work authorization, and therefore employment is not a possibility for them. So how can we still help them launch a career if they cannot be employed? So we'll talk a little bit about that. And then Doris is going to talk about some effective practices that colleges are putting in place to support their dreamers in launching their careers. And then we'll end with sharing some resources. So we hope that this is what you will know by the end. In case you don't know anything about TheDream.Us, we're the largest college access and success program for undocumented students. We provide scholarships nationwide, and we already have alumni who have graduated and are in the working world. And it is through this process of supporting undocumented students through college and the work that we've got, the learning that we've received from our alumni that has informed some of this the content of this presentation. Next slide. Okay, so the way that we talk about dreamers in the workforce to both our scholars, to both undocumented students and to businesses is the fact that we have a challenge and an opportunity. One of the challenges is right now, especially in this world of pandemic and an awareness of diversity, inclusion, and equity, businesses have a challenge to create more diverse and inclusive workforces, and also they're struggling to find workers, right? You hear right now a lot in the news that businesses cannot find people and therefore have to increase salaries and implement other recruitment strategies. So by hiring dreamers and looking for dreamers, the businesses can meet that challenge. They can create a more diverse workforce, and they can find those workers that are going to be loyal and very skilled at their businesses. So that's how we present that. And also when we talk to the scholars, we talk about like, no, you are wanted. Go out there and sell yourself as this person who brings you the experiences of your background, presents new voices to the businesses, and how much and what your skills are that will contribute to that business. So we really like to frame it in that way as we talk to the businesses and scholars. Next slide. Okay, so just a little word on dreamers so that we're all on the same page. Go ahead. And this is how we talk about it, about dreamers to, again, potential employers and others, is they're undocumented immigrants who came here at a young age. The average age, at least for the Dream.Us scholars, is of when they came to this country is at 4 years old. So these are students that are Americans in every sense of the word, except for a piece of paper. They grew up in this country. They've gone to the schools here. They've been contributing to the communities that they live in. They're culturally, linguistically, politically Americans. So they bring all that American spirit into their schools and into their communities. They have been leaders at their schools and their communities. Dreamers who go to college and graduate from college have shown already a level of resiliency, motivation, problem solving, and perseverance that puts them ahead above many other communities. And that bears out on persistence, the college persistence and and graduation rates of dreamers. They tend to be much higher than other students on campuses. And they're eager to participate in this country's social and economic prosperity. They're eager to give back to their communities. They're very service oriented. They not only want to have their own careers and progress themselves, but they're really wanting to contribute to their business and to the communities. And again, some have DACA, some don't. But this country is their home and they're really here to stay. They're not going away. So how do we make sure that we use their talents to contribute to our communities? Okay, next slide. So the current state of DACA, as you might know or probably know, USCIS is no longer approving new DACA applications, which means that many undocumented students that are coming into our colleges as freshmen are going to be students who do not have work authorization because they don't have the ability to get DACA right now. And that means that our colleges are going to have to provide services beyond employment to these students. For those who do have DACA, it can be renewed for 2 years. Students may apply for advanced parole in case they want to do study abroad. And really, at the end of the day, the final solution is in Congress's hands, especially now that Judge Hanen in Texas ruled that DACA again is, I guess, unconstitutional, and therefore new DACA applications cannot be accepted or approved. But he did leave the renewal possibility in place. Okay, so that's state of DACA. Okay, so let's talk about supporting those who have work authorization. Go ahead. So one thing to know is that employers are already recognizing that dreamers are contributing to their businesses. When the Supreme Court last year put a decision on DACA and said that DACA should continue, the employers played a key role in that. They submitted an amicus brief that was signed by hundreds of employers, where they talked about how dreamers were working in their businesses, the type of jobs that they were doing, and how it's important for these businesses to retain that workforce. And these are just some of those quotes from the employers. So just for us to know that once students are working for a company, they immediately become very valuable for that company. And then a lot of times those companies then become advocates for dreamers. Next slide. Okay, so here's some very important pieces of advice that we need to give to undocumented students that have work authorization. One is that that they have DACA or they have TPS, they have a renewal employment EAD that allows them to work. And because they have that EAD document, they do not need sponsorship in order from an employer. And this is really key. I've seen many students tell employers, either through an application or during an interview, that they need sponsorship. And that can turn employers off, and they might not want to hire them because they don't want to sponsor, because that costs money, it takes resources that a company might not want to engage in or have. And then therefore that student is closing that door to employment with that company. And students might say that they need a sponsorship because they're thinking, well, eventually, since I don't have, a green card, maybe through sponsorship is a way for me to get a green card. And really they're shooting themselves in the foot, because it's like they increase the possibility that they're not getting hired, when in fact they can be hired. They do not need sponsorship. They have work authorization. So they should always answer that question from employers as a no, I do not need sponsorship because I have work authorization. Eventually, once the student is in the working for a company for many years, for a year or so, maybe sponsorship becomes a possibility, who knows, but it's important that the students get their foot in the door. It is unlawful for employers to refuse to hire someone because they have DACA or TPS status. MALDEF has brought lawsuits against several major companies, like, for example, Bank of America, because they were discriminating against those with DACA and TPS, and they've settled those lawsuits, obviously with a benefit to Dreamers. So it is important to also, as you talk to employers, to let them know that they cannot refuse to hire those with DACA and TPS. And the other thing that is important for the students to know is that they do not have to disclose their status to employers at any point in their application process or while they're working for that company. All the information that the employer needs is the employment authorization document. There are different ways that people get an employment authorization document. There are all different kinds of visas and immigration statuses that allows them to have work authorization. And the employer does not need to know how the student received that employment, that EAD card. All they need to know is that they have it. And go to the next slide. So this is what the employment authorization card looks like. In case you have not seen it, every student that has a DACA or TPS has a card like this. And when they are employed, when they're filling out their I-9s, this is the card that they would use. And the moment that the students have that card, that also they have a social security number that they can start using. Okay, next slide. Now, while I have said that students do not have to disclose their DACA or TPS status with their employers, some students might choose to and might want to disclose that status. We have this video that was created by two of our alumni, which I think maybe Doris is sharing in the chat, I don't know. But you can share this video with your dreamers on your campus. And it's a video where these two alumni talk about their decision to share or not share their status. So on one hand, you have Sedana, who works in the nonprofit world. She actually works right now for TheDream.Us, but she's done previous work in nonprofits, where for her it's important to share her immigration story and her status, especially during job interviews, because she believes that that helps do her job better. And she sees that employers value the fact that she has that life experience to bring into the type of work that she does. And she feels that is so integral to who she is, and in order to be authentic, that she needs to share that during jobs interviews. And that's worked for her. And that's how she has analyzed it and come to the realization that she wants to disclose. On the other hand, you have Myford, who says he never discloses his DACA or TPS status to employers. He believes it has no relevance to his job. He worries that it might be a detriment for being hired or discriminated against. And so he decides not to share. And so he talks about this video. So this is a good resource to share with dreamers as they're thinking about what to say or not to say during networking events or interviews. I wanted to share a couple of resources that we have developed for our students. One is a fact sheet and a guide for dreamers. The fact sheet is basically a 2-pager that just talks about what they need to know, what they should say or not say about if they want to be hired. And the employment rights guide is literally what are the rights and what companies should do or not do, or how they should answer some questions. So 2 good resources to share with your undocumented students on campus. Again, this is for those that have work authorization, right? Because this is employment related. Next slide. And we've also developed some resources that you can give to your employers. All your career center offices, I believe, have relationships with employers who come on campus for career fairs, etc. Or you might do trainings with employers. It's important to raise awareness of dreamers and them as a potential talent pool for these businesses and companies. So I've seen colleges, for example, I know Doris at UCF has done presentations or asked me to do presentations for employers. Yeah, or if you provide a website specifically for employers, you could add these resources on that website, or find other ways to share and to raise, like I said, awareness about dreamers. Next slide. Okay, some resources, and then I'm gonna take some questions. I think there might be some questions in the chat. Some resources for you to be aware of. President's Alliance is an advocacy organization where college presidents come together to advocate for policies that are friendly to dreamers. So it's a good place to go for information related to what's the latest laws that are affecting undocumented students. The second one is the Higher Education Immigration Portal. This portal, also created by the President's Alliance, has resources on effective practices to support dreamers, some related to career, but also one of the key things that they have that I think is great is they have a map that outlines not only financial aid for dreamers, but also licensing for dreamers. Some states give the opportunity for dreamers to apply for professional licenses, others don't. Some do in some fields, but not in others. So different states are all over the place on when dreamers can be licensed to do a particular type of work. So at this portal, you can go to the map, click on your state, and learn what the laws are regarding licensing for undocumented students in your particular state. And it's very important for undocumented students to know those laws because it will affect their ability to practice or not practice the career that they've chosen. The fourth thing is a list of dreamer-friendly companies. These are companies that advocated for DACA with the Supreme Court. So we believe that these are friendly companies to dreamers. And then if you see any employer discrimination related to immigration status, you can always report it to MALDEF because MALDEF is involved in that. Okay, so let's take questions, Doris. What's on the chat?
So there was a question about what does advanced parole mean?
Okay, good question. So for undocumented people cannot leave the US and then come back, right? Because it's illegal to do that. They don't have papers to be able to cross borders and come back. Now, those that do have DACA and TPS may travel abroad, but only if they get a special permission from the immigration law for UCSIS, and that permission is called advanced parole. So it's a document that allows students to leave this country, and then when they come back to cross through immigration at the airport or at the border, they show their advanced parole so they can come back into the US. When during the Trump administration, when DACA was taken away, advanced parole was taken away. When the Supreme Court reinstated DACA, then advanced parole was reinstated also. Every student has to make a decision if they want to take advantage of that or not, because there's always the risk that they might not be able to come back even with advanced parole, because at the end of the day, it's at the discretion of that immigration officer at that border or at that airport that looks at the advanced parole, and they can make the final decision and they will accept it or not. We have not heard of anyone being rejected, but it's not like 100% sure thing.
Okay, I have a few more questions that came in, Tanya. Will there be an updated employer dreamer friendly list available for 2021?
So that's one of the activities of one of the task forces of this group. So I know there's a group of several of you who are working on creating some criteria and some way of identifying dreamer-friendly companies. And the work will start and we'll see. The Dream.Us is not going to do an updated list of dreamer-friendly companies. And we're really hoping that this task force of this committee will work on that.
Great, that's good to know. What if a student does not have DACA or TPS? How do we assist those students?
Correct, that's going to be, I'm going to go there next, right after I answer all these questions.
Two more questions. What is the cost for the DACA renewal? And have you heard of any companies helping to cover this cost?
Yes, the cost is $495 to renew DACA. And yes, there are companies and colleges who are helping dreamers with that fee.
Do you have a specific reason to apply for advanced parole? Do you have to have a specific reason to apply for advanced parole? And is it on hold if DACA is on hold?
Okay, so yes, you have to have a specific reason to apply for advanced parole. And it's usually because a family member is sick and you need to go help, or you need to say goodbye. Or the other one is for educational reasons or academic research. So those are some of the ones that I know of. There might be others. I'm not an immigration lawyer, so I don't know all of that stuff, but yes, you do have to have a specific reason. Okay. And if DACA is on hold, is advanced parole also on hold? Advanced parole is, DACA is on hold for new applicants, okay? But those that have DACA right now can still have DACA, and because they still have DACA, advanced parole, they can still apply for advanced parole.
Can you give examples of careers that require U.S. citizenship in which DACA recipients would not be eligible for? The person wrote, I originally thought because DACA recipients have work authorization that they can apply and be eligible for any role they meet minimum requirements for, but I'm realizing that is incorrect. For example, police officers in our area require U.S. citizenship.
That is correct. Some government jobs require U.S. citizenship if they have to do with national security or safety. And sometimes that even includes research, right? Like if someone's doing research that might affect like weapons, right? That could potentially bar not even just an undocumented person, but sometimes even legal residents, people that have green cards cannot apply to those jobs. So it is true that some government, like FBI or CIA, most likely you have to be a U.S. citizen. Yep, Mendora says defense contractors also. Yep.
Are DACA students given Social Security numbers?
Yes. DACA and TPS students are given Social Security numbers. Yes, students that have DACA and TPS and therefore work authorization can apply to roles on Handshake. Right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so they can apply for roles unless it requires U.S. citizenship, but employers have the opportunity to post whether they do or don't offer sponsorship or whether a candidate must be a U.S. citizenship. But as Tanya mentioned at the beginning, the students don't need work authorization. They already have it. Those with DACA status.
Yeah. When we do trainings or talk to employers, we really encourage them to ask the question of students regarding their status, to say either, do you have work authorization and are you a U.S. citizen, if they need to know. Like if you're the FBI, you're going to ask, are you a citizen? But if you're IBM, right, or Google, you don't have to ask that. All you need to really ask is, are you authorized to work in the U.S. or do you have work authorization? And if the answer is yes, that student can apply. And if they meet other requirements, can be hired by the company.
I do have a question. This is Cynthia. You said that they are taking Daca renewals, right?
Yes.
Just not new applications. If for some reason someone is not able to get renewed, but they're employed, how does that communication process go?
The communication process between the employer and the student?
Yes. Yes.
Yes, that's a very good question. Thank you for bringing that up. And especially because right now what's happening is there's a big backlog of renewals, and some students are seeing that their renewals are not being processed in time for them to continue being employed. And really, if a student is not renewed, if their work authorization is not renewed in time, they can no longer be employed, and the company would have to let them go. Because if they continue employing them, they would be doing something illegal. And the HR offices, part of their duties is to check on students that have, or employees that have work authorization, to make sure that they are maintaining renewable. And a lot of times HR departments will send an email to the person as their documentation is about to expire, saying, hey, your documentation is about to expire, please come and show us your renewed documentation. And really then it becomes kind of a conversation between the student and HR department. Some HR departments decide to let the student go with an understanding that once the student receives the work authorization, they will be rehired. Some companies put the employers on leave, and then just they start working again once they get the renewal application. That could be a possibility. I mean, the renewal documentation, that could be a possibility. Some companies will accept the receipt from the student saying that they've submitted the renewal, even though the renewal has not been issued. That's really not what they're supposed to be doing, but some companies are doing that. So it really becomes the student or the employee talking with the HR to see what could be put in place for that student.
So HR is aware of that expiration date?
Yes, absolutely. Because when the student originally, I keep saying student, but when the employee originally showed the ID card, when they were doing the I-9 forms, then HR will note their expiration date.
Okay.
Artist, I just put the card on the screen. It looks like a driver's license, so it has the expiration date on there.
Kristen says, but the HR support would require the student to disclose. They do not, okay, so let's make a distinction between immigration status and work authorization. Students do not have to disclose their immigration status at any point. Immigration status meaning they have DACA or they have TPS or they're an international, well, not international, or they have visa or whatever. There are all kinds of immigration statuses that give someone a work authorization. So they don't have to disclose that immigration status. What they do have to disclose is if they have work authorization or not. So they're related, obviously, but they're different things. Any other questions?
So how does this affect internships? Are students with DACA able to apply for internship positions?
Yes, they can, because they can be employed and they can be paid. Now, the students that do not have work authorization, they can, and I'll talk a little bit about this later too, but obviously they can apply for unpaid internships. But there are also things that can be set up called experiential learning opportunities, and we'll talk about that in a little bit.
And then how soon does someone have to apply for DACA renewal?
So right now it's recommended that students apply around 150 days before their DACA expires.
Okay, and then just to confirm, there are many immigration statuses that require that give work authorization, Tanya, correct? And then it's the work authorization that has to be disclosed, not the immigration status. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, awesome.
There's
So
a
you
question about, can you reapply for DACA sooner for the renewal? You could, but we don't recommend that, because what happens is if you apply sooner, is you're going to lose some of the months that you would have had that work authorization, because it might get renewed too early, and then you might lose 1, 2, or 3 months, and that matters for students because of the fee. The $495 is a lot for the students to pay. So if the student renews 150 days ahead of time, that should be with enough time.
And then there was a question, I went back about Handshake. So on Handshake, it asks if you require work authorization. So those students with DACA status or TPS, they already have work authorization at this point, if they have that card. So they don't need work authorization. They might need it once that card expires. But then that's what they would submit to the HR office when they are given a job offer and they accept that job offer. But so because I've seen that question in Handshake as well, they have work authorization if they have that DACA status or TPS status. Okay, that's it for now, Tanya.
All right, let's move on, because good questions. Thank you, everyone. So let's talk about those who do not have work authorization because they don't have DACA or TPS. So really for these students, it's entrepreneurial opportunities that are going to be available to them as an opportunity for them to launch their careers. And this can be hard for students, right? Because maybe they had their heart set on being a teacher, and they won't be able to get employed by a school district or a private or school to be teachers, or charter school, or anyone really. So it's literally a conversation of how do you pivot, given the skills that you have and your interests, to become an entrepreneur. So maybe that student can start a tutoring company as a business, right? Teacher, go to tutoring. Or maybe the student can become an independent contractor to a private school to provide a special service that student can bring to that school. So it's really about helping students figure out how they can use their skills to start a business or become an independent contractor. Or the third option is to join a worker co-op. And I'll talk a little bit more about each of these later on. Now, the reason why these are opportunities for undocumented students without work authorization is because none of these are employment. They are, and therefore they don't have to have work authorization. They don't have to have a social security number, because for independent contracting, they can apply to get an Itin, or for a business, they would get an EIN. And as long as they're paying taxes every year, which is they're legally required to do, then they will be okay. Okay, next slide. So a little bit about Itin. Again, as I said, to become an independent contractor, you need an Itin number, because then you'll use that to pay your taxes. And the company that hires you as an independent contractor is gonna wanna see the Itin number. So one thing for Dreamers to know is that if their parents have been filing income taxes and then listing them as dependents, they might have already requested an Itin number for that student, because they would be putting the Itin number for that child in their tax forms. So these students might already have it and they might not even know it. So the recommendation is go look at your parents' file income taxes from previous years and see if there's an Itin number there for you. If there is, if you already have one, then you can go to the IRS website and find out if your Itin number is active or if it has expired. And if it has expired, you can renew it. And here are 2 links on this website on a video on how to renew your Itin if it's expired, or how to apply for one. And I don't know if you can grab those links. But I think what we will do is at the end of this session, maybe Doris will send everybody a link to this PowerPoint so you have access to all these links. Okay. All right, the other, I want to share this really good resource. So entrepreneurship, so Immigrants Rising, I don't know if you heard of Immigrants Rising, but they're an organization in California that helps undocumented students in a variety of ways. And one of the ways that they do it is by helping them become entrepreneurs. And they've launched a website called UndocuHustle. It's called, and the link is undocuhustle.org. And basically it has a curriculum that is specific to undocumented students on how they can start a business or become an independent contractor. So this is the first place I send dreamers to that are interested in these options, because it will get them started on how to figure out if they want to become an independent contractor or do a business. Next slide. The next resource I want to highlight for you is Parker Dewey. Parker Dewey basically contracts with lots of different companies for them to post short-term projects on their website. And students can go and apply to those short-term projects. And if they're hired, or the company wants to hire that student to work on that project, then Parker Dewey will hire that student as an independent contractor to work on that project for that company. So the reason why this works for undocumented students without work authorization is because they can work through Parker Dewey as an independent contractor on this variety of projects. So it's kind of like a little bit of a workaround because it is an independent contractor relationship. And students can apply to several projects. They can be working on 2, 3, 4 projects at the same time. And that helps them not only earn income, but also build their resumes and develop new skills and network. So this is especially for students as they're going through their undergrad years. They can do this over the summer or during the school year. Next slide. Okay, so someone asked about worker co-ops. How do we learn about worker co-ops in other states? Yes, so first of all, what's a worker co-op, in case you're not familiar? Basically, it's a business, it's a group of people that have come together, they create an LLC, and then they provide services based on the skills that group of people bring together. The benefit is the fact that you're not trying to start a own, but you have colleagues where you create a business as a group and you're still business owners and therefore not employees. And there's an organization called Democracy at Work Institute based in New York City that helps organizations or colleges start worker co-ops in their communities. They will help you figure out what kind of alliances you need in your communities and to start a worker co-op. And then they provide the training and capacity building to help start a worker co-op. So that's one place to go. They just launched their most recent worker co-op was for those students that had tech skills. And it was just launched like a month ago. And it was based, I believe, I can't remember if it was North Carolina or South Carolina. The other places is the business chambers or worker development organizations, community worker development organizations in your state or in your cities. They might have listings of worker co-ops, or those are the kind of places that you can explore alliances with to start worker co-ops. Great, and I see a comment from Nicole saying that they just partner with Parker Dewey. Yeah, Parker Dewey is free. You don't have to pay for anything. All right, okay, so fellowships. So another way that you can help your dreamers is by providing fellowships, paid fellowships, which is basically an experiential learning opportunity where students would have to work on some sort of academic related project or some research project. And then you could provide stipends for that because it's considered a fellowship or a learning experiential opportunity, not employment. And nonprofits or public or colleges can create these for undocumented students. Here are two resources, one by the Presence Alliance and one's by Immigrants Rising, on how you can set those up on those institutions. And we know some institutions are doing this and have set them up. Okay, so I encourage you to check out those guides and see if your college can provide these for students. Okay, next slide. All right, so entrepreneurship resources to give to the students. I've talked about Immigrants Rising and their UndocuHustle website. They also have a Facebook community, and here's the link. And this is a great community that your dreamers who can be entrepreneurs or who will want to be entrepreneurs can join. It's a community of immigrant entrepreneurs, most of them undocumented. They share a lot of resources with each other. They support each other. They motivate each other. It's really a wonderful community. I'm a member of that just to keep tabs so I can see how it's helpful for each other. And then a Freelancers Union and Skillshare, they just are two good websites that provide training and support for those who want to be independent contractors. For business owners, a Small Business Majority has a lot of online trainings on how to start a business, a small business. And then the Opportunity Fund provides, I think this number is wrong. I don't think it's 250K. It might be just 100K, I forget. But they're business loans for low and moderate income immigrants to start companies. And then, as I mentioned, Democracy at Work Institute. And I see a question about examples of fellowships and worker co-ops. Yes, Doris is going to go into that because she's going to talk about a couple of colleges that are doing that. All right. Any other questions regarding entrepreneurship as a venue for those without work authorization to have careers? How long are Itin numbers active? You know, that's a good question. I am not sure. They used to be that they actually, once you had one, you had them forever. They never expired. So but only about 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, is when the law changed and now they expire. And I really cannot remember. But it might be just 1 or 2 years or 3 years. I really don't know. But I'm going to go find out because I should know that. Thank you for asking that question and bringing it up. Any other questions? Okay, why don't we turn it over to you, Doris?
Sure. So I'm going to talk about how colleges can support dreamers and their career advancement. It's our responsibility to really assist all students move forward in their career trajectory. So it's important that we become familiar with the resources. It's important that we provide dreamers as well with correct information, especially as far as the different organizations and who they can contact. As Tanya previously touched on this, TheDream.Us has tools on their website that are available for both employers and students, and colleges and universities as well. So I would encourage you to review the fact sheets, the toolkit, download them and share them with your teams. We actually share some of those resources on our UCF Career Services website. We have an employer-facing page and a student-facing page, and we link to those resources on our website. And then find out what resources are available at your institutions. Many colleges and universities have one person or an office dedicated to supporting undocumented and DACA students. A lot of the times the person is housed in the financial aid office or perhaps the multicultural center. And so I know I have a great relationship with the person in our multicultural center who is the point person for those students. And then she also
coordinates with financial aid regarding their DREAM scholarship. Let's see, next on my list here, create career services and resources specific to Dreamers. So I had attended a conference a few months ago where Northeastern Illinois University spoke about an event that they had specific to Dreamers on their campus. They worked with an organization called Upwardly Global and TheDream.Us to organize a resource fair for their undocumented and Dreamer students, where the students can meet employers for professional opportunities. I thought that was a really great event. At UCF, we partner with different campus professionals to reach students who would not otherwise take advantage of our career services resources. So as I mentioned, we have a great relationship with the Dream.Us Scholar Advisor, and that helps us connect to the Dreamers. Those students check in with their Scholar Advisor at least once a semester. They receive email newsletters from her, and so I feed her information to share with those students. So I had shared with her an opportunity for students to apply for a fellowship that was open to anyone, regardless of residency status. And so she shared it with those students. She also put me in contact with the students who are part of the undocumented student or registered organization here at UCF, and I was able to present to those students as well. Let's see. And when I presented to those students, they actually had a lot of questions regarding their rights and whether or not they should disclose their status in interviews. And so, it's a personal choice for everyone. I shared the video that we shared earlier in today's presentation, but I also introduced them to career services and sort of the resources that we have regarding resumes, cover letters, interviews, and interviewing and networking, so that could help them in their journey as well. Let's see, next on the list, create scholarships and fellowship opportunities for Dreamers. So when meeting with students, again, it's important to know the resources available to them from financial aid and your scholarship office. Depending on your institution, as we mentioned previously, you might be able to create scholarships and or fellowships for Dreamers. So again, things to consider. Next, create, promote, or support worker co-ops. So the U.S. Federation of Worker Cooperatives has free monthly worker co-ops webinars for anybody interested in learning more. So this can be posted on your career services event listings, on your websites, or shared with Dreamers. And I'll put those in the chat as well, that site. Let me see if I can do it as I talk here. But I thought that was a really great resource for our students. And actually that reminds me, I have to upload that onto our website. And then as Tanya mentioned, there's the Democracy at Work Institute that provides a lot of information on developing a worker co-op. Okay. Next on the list here, refer students to entrepreneurship training programs or create programs specific for undocumented students. So there's a lot that might be available in your community already. At the University of Central Florida, we have a Center for Entrepreneurial Leadership, which offers all of our students resources, mentors, workshops, so that they might explore their business ideas and learn about startup organizations. So again, I know that a lot of universities offer the same, if not a similar type of resources. At the community level, you can look into the Small Business Administration, the Small Business Development Center, Women's Business Centers, the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce in your community. And so again, there is a lot of resources out there already in your community. Let's see, next on the list, educate employers and help them tap into this growing talent pool. So again, we can't assume that our employers are up to date on DACA rights. It's, it seems like it's constantly changing depending on the courts, the lawsuits, etc. So Tanya previously mentioned the fact sheet on the TheDream.Us website. So again, link that fact sheet to any student and employer website pages. We actually invited the TheDream.Us to present to employers during our Employer Education Summit. I know a lot of colleges and universities, the Career Services Office will have employer education workshops. They might have a day where employers come to campus and learn about different campus resources. So I would encourage you to reach out to Tanya about doing something for the employers that recruit from your institution. When she presented to our employers, it was done virtually, and she presented to them information about Dreamers, information on hiring Dreamers with DACA or TPS, and really how to access this diverse group of students. And she also gave examples of Dreamer-friendly, welcoming environments and showed different websites, company websites that had Dreamers on their websites to really advocate for those individuals and to show that they were a company that would welcome them to their
Doris,
folks.
can I say something about this here? Just that one of the things that one of the task groups that are part of this committee is talking about is possibly create a template, an employer awareness template, PowerPoint template, basically, that colleges, career services people from colleges can use to give your own presentations to your employers. So hopefully that's an idea that will come to fruition.
Definitely, that's right. I forgot we had talked about that. We missed last month's meeting, so it's all blurry right now. And then last on the list is just become familiar with the state professional licensing laws, depending on the majors that you have on your campuses. Students that are nursing majors, occupational therapy majors, or teaching have to have professional licensing. And it really varies by state whether folks with DACA or TPS are eligible to apply for licensing, and that can affect their employment opportunities as well. So become familiar with those laws in your state. I know we're all from the Southeast here, but it can vary, from Florida to Georgia, Texas, etc. And then is this you or me, Tanya?
Well, I just want to say, I mean, we've told you about the employer fact sheet, but the other thing that you will find on our website, on this link that you have at the bottom, I don't know if you can copy and paste it into the chat, Doris, but we have what we call a key influencers toolkit. And that's literally a toolkit that you can give employers, and that talks about how employers can attract dreamers, the kind of languages and messages that they can use to recruit dreamers for their workforces, and also how they can become advocates for dreamers. It is for our students, for all dreamers, when they see an organization or a company that understands who they are and that advocates for them, they're much more likely to go work for you. So that could be really a good resource for you to share with your employers.
I think it was Bank of America or Truist Bank that had that website that showed or specified that dreamers were welcome there.
Yeah, Truist Bank. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. And then this page just lists different colleges and what they're doing to support DACA Dreamers, TPS students at their institutions. Lehman College, the students there created a worker co-op called Radiate Consulting, and it has a few different locations from California, New York, North Carolina, and each of the locations offers a different service to folks. But that's one example of a worker co-op that was created by students. The Metropolitan State University of Denver has a career webpage for dreamers. There's videos on there regarding entrepreneurship resources. You can actually view them yourselves or let your students know that they exist. Rutgers University had a virtual career expo for dreamers. And so this is a video for students, not only at Rutgers, but really nationwide, about accessing opportunities for internships, again, entrepreneurship resources, but also graduate and professional school. One of the things that I thought was really interesting in this video was that students were instructed that they could actually change their name on the Zoom video if they didn't want to release their names. I think that's important because we have to be sensitive to student concerns and leave disclosure about their status up to each individual. And then the video also features a segment on entrepreneurship by a fellow at Immigrants Rising, He gave a master class on setting up your own business. And so I thought that was really interesting also. And then Texas A&M, they set up their own experiential fellowships for students to engage in a project. The University of California at Santa Cruz is also on here with a program that was created. And then the University of Central Florida, again, we have resource for dreamers on our website, which are just really linked from the TheDream.Us organization. And so the links are on here. When we send out the PowerPoint, you'll be able to click on the links and see these resources for yourself and share them with your students or folks in your office.
And I also just shared in the chat the fact that Dominican University in Illinois just set up some experiential fellowships. So I give you the link so you can go check those out.
Great, thank you. And then I think this slide, Tanya, might have been just a list of support services that institutions provide. I think we did this as a poll maybe last time.
Yeah, I think this is really for you to kind of look at this and think about, are you doing this? Are you doing this? If you're not, is this something your university can take on doing all or one of these things? So really it's for you to reflect on and bring back to your teams and think about the possibility of you putting this together.
I just have a quick question. Is anyone doing anything that you haven't heard us yet mention? Is anyone doing anything different at their campus? If not, it's okay. I was just curious.
And maybe Maria, I think you're here from Dominican. Could you tell us a little bit about how you went about setting up those experiential fellowships?
Yes, give me a second here. Hello, everyone. Yes, so we worked with our cultural center with Jackie, and what we came up with was non-employment based opportunities that students can do on campus. They are project based. So a student gets to design a project based on either their field of study or something that they're interested in. And it could be a 1 semester or 2 semester long project. They get a mentor that mentors them and provides them the resources for the student to create this project and execute it. And then they present at the end of the semester or the year to either, their their department at a conference that does research. So there are a couple of different ways that the student would be presenting, and then they receive a stipend at the end of the completion of the project.
And how much is that stipend, Maria, and where does the funding come from?
So the funding is coming from each department, and then the stipend is roughly about $2,000, but it is depending on the department's budget. But right now we have a student already that is starting their project. She is a junior and she's getting room and board as part of our project, and it is a year project that she will be doing with our student life.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Ms. Doris said, any questions, or we would love to hear from any of you that are putting together some of these practices that we've been talking about, or others that we haven't mentioned. We'd love to hear. And this is really an opportunity for all of us to be learning from each other. So if anyone would like to share. Otherwise, I'm going to assume none of you are doing anything to help dreamers.
I know this was a lot of information presented also, so they might be just processing it all.
Yep. Or maybe you could talk about a service that you think you would want to provide, and maybe you have questions, or tell us where you are in the process of setting that up and what challenges you're encountering or opportunities.
I'm Donnell, and I'm with the University of Houston. I'm on the Employer Development and Relations team. And this is just a thought that came into my head while we were talking today, so I can't tell you, for sure where this will go, but I do a summer program called Employer U, and it's like a university for our employers to come and at one time learn everything about maximizing their applicant yield and branding and so forth. But I foresee the event becoming more like a small conference where they would have different subject matter areas that they could choose to go to sessions about. And so I could definitely see this being, there's a need for this to be presented to employers, and I think there would be a great amount of interest in it. So I will tell you that that's, it's next summer, so it's on the back burner, but it is in the back burner of my head. And I'm serving with Donna Justice as a co-chair of one of the smaller committees. And so I will do everything I can to make sure that I'm using these resources and getting them to our employers.
That would be great. And certainly, hopefully by that time, this task force that is working on how to educate employers will have that PowerPoint template that you can use.
Okay.
And certainly go to the TheDream.Us website. Would you mind going there for a second, Doris, since you're sharing your screen? If you go to our homepage, you'll see that on our homepage, on the top right-hand side, there's a link that says Hire Dreamers. If you go in there, that's where you can find our Influencers Toolkit. Really, that might be really helpful in putting together some of the content that you can provide employers, along with the other guides.
Okay, awesome. I will absolutely take a look at that and utilize it. Thank you.
So I see a comment here from Bernadette that they're doing a number of these. Bernadette, maybe you can share about, like, is there any, what are you finding challenging or more successful in these services that you're providing or that you've tried to provide?
Hi, everyone. I think that in terms of the challenges, I think it is that certainly for offices on our campus and folks who are more supportive and well aware of how to support undocumented students, it's not as hard and they're much more willing to be creative. I think for those who don't know the information, they pretty much sort of balk at the, I don't know what this means, so I can't do anything. And so that's a hurdle. Thankfully, I will say that at the higher levels of administration, they're very supportive. It's just the realities, as I mentioned, that because of COVID, there are other funding necessities that actually have to kind of take place. And so, there have just been a lot of let's move this forward. And then it's sort of, okay, but what's the bigger issue right now? And, certainly, our campus has also been, our chancellor's a part of the President's Alliance. We're very much like advocacy focused. But again, sometimes it's just the reality of, funding, which I'm sure all of us experience in many other ways as well.
Yeah. So in talking about that, I see that Katie, Katie, maybe when you talk, tell us what college you're on, but you're talking about creating a fund to provide students with unpaid internships. Can you tell us a little bit about how you're raising that money? And I would imagine that these would be open, that Dreamers Without Work Authorization would be eligible for these.
Yeah. Hi. So yeah, I'm at Nevada State College. And my supervisor, Nicole, is also on here. But essentially, we got some funds they come from the college just for this year. It's like a one-time fund. And I believe they came from like a grant. It was kind of like overhead. So it wasn't anything that we raised, but we're hoping that going forward, since this was just like a one-time fund, that we can secure other funds essentially. But yeah, essentially what we're trying to do, which isn't necessarily new, a lot of other colleges have been doing this, is we're initially going to have something as a scholarship to provide students who are engaging in unpaid internships with compensation to sort of like offset costs of like living, right? Like whether that's if they have to like drive to their internship, you know, just housing and other personal costs, which we know can be a barrier for a lot of students, especially in the area that we live in. We're in like the Las Vegas area. And so that kind of equity issue. And we're still kind of working through it. It's not 100% set yet. But instead of a scholarship, we're hoping to actually now work with Parker Dewey as a third party. And so we would provide the funds through Parker Dewey, and then Parker would be like the payroll agent. And so that way we could provide students who are dreamers and who don't have employment authorization, they could apply for that Itin. And so the whole process would be that they still like apply through us through an application system, and we go through because we only have a certain number of folks that we can give the money to. And then once that's figured out, we give those names to Parker Dewey, and then Parker Dewey takes on the payroll system. So if that's something that anyone's ever thought of, it's a really great opportunity. I think they said that University of Cincinnati already has a similar program that they're using, and Parker Dewey told us about them and how they set that up for their school. So yeah, that's something that we're trying to work on. And then again, that would be open to dreamers because then they would just have to apply for an Itin and they would be paid as an independent contractor. But yeah, that's one thing that we're working on.
It's very smart to use Parker Dewey in that way. And I know they're very open to doing that because what they're, they want to be able to list as many projects on their website. And then you could do that. You can create those projects at the university level, and instead of going through your university systems, which can be sometimes more bureaucratic and red tape, you can do it through Parker Dewey, and it becomes much easier. So that's very smart. I'd love to hear how that goes, Katie, as you develop the relationship with Parker Dewey to do that.
There's a question in the chat from Nicole, Tanya, about independent contracting for dreamers.
She's all independent contracting jobs eligible, for individuals without work authorization, as it depends on the specific organization. It's the same thing as employment. If the money is going to come from a government source, or if the job itself is related to a government job, or like or government organization like the FBI, the police, is less likely or unlikely that they will hire someone that is not a U.S. citizen. Are there any job boards specifically for independent contracting work? There must be others. The one that I know and that I'm aware of is Parker Dewey, which is the short-term projects. But beyond that, I don't know any that are just specific for independent contracting.
I know a lot of folks in financial services, insurance sales are a lot of those positions, not a lot of them, some positions are independent contract positions as well. It really depends on the company. And that would be, for students who are, looking to go into those industries as well. It's not something that students really think about when they're in college. They learn about it through attending a workshop by one of those organizations, or hearing about it maybe from a faculty member. But I know that in my role in employer relations, I'm often meeting with different companies, and some of them will say that they have independent contracting positions available. So I think it's, when you're meeting with employers, it's worth it to ask whether they're W-2 or I-9, or sort of to get an idea of what they're looking for.
Any other questions, or anyone else who would like to share what they're doing or your challenges? Okay, so Doris will be sharing this PowerPoint with you, the link to the PowerPoint. And let's just close with a couple of messages that we always have in mind as we advise our students and as we talk to them. It's been a tough, and it continues to be a tough environment for dreamers because of the instability of DACA, all the anti-immigration rhetoric that is going on in the country. Our students, even though they're doing well, in spite of all of these things in school, there's still the levels of anxiety, depression, wanting to give up is very much on the surface for our students. And so as we talk to them, let's please all keep that in mind, that our students are on edge and that they need to be supported, motivated, and in some ways loved, because it's so hard for them to be undocumented right now in this country. And they need to know that the great majority of Americans believe that dreamers should stay and should be given a path to citizenship. There have been many polls done on this, poll after poll, and one of the latest ones that has been done in the past 6 months or so, I can't remember right now who did, I should have the source here, is so that, but every poll is somewhere around 75 and 85% of Americans believe that dreamers should be given a path to citizenship. So remind students that Americans believe in them and want them here, and see them and see the contributions that they can have. So to keep going, to not despair, and that staying in school and getting their degree is worth to continue doing that. It's worth that, continue that journey for several reasons. Not only will obviously open employment opportunities or entrepreneurship opportunities for them, and so that they can earn higher incomes, but also if at some point Congress acts and passes a dream-like legislation or some laws that allow them to apply for citizenship eventually, the fact that they went to college and got a degree or in college will help them in that process. And the reason why I'm saying that is because in all the previous proposed laws that have been put forth, one of the criteria is that the students either have served in the armed forces or have some sort of higher level education, or it would give them extra points or bonus points, if you will, if they have stay in college. So it will eventually even serve them as they try to legalize themselves, if I could use that word, or obtain the immigration status of green cards. And the fact is also that no one can take away their education, no matter what happens. We've seen some of our dreamers have left this country and have gone to other countries because they are more immigration friendly. And then, they have that college from the United States, and a United States college diploma matters a lot in other countries. So even if that comes to be true, right, having that degree will stay with them. So it's really important to give these two types of messages to our students and to help them continue to see the options in front of them. And with that, thank you for attending this. I'm so glad to see all of you caring about the student population. And thank you for all the work that you do to support these students. It matters a lot, and students see it, acknowledge, and feel when they have advocates on their side. Anything from you, Boris?
No, thank you so much, Tanya, for presenting to the group today, and for all of your knowledge that you're willing to share with us. I want to remind folks that the NACE DACA subcommittee meets once a month. We're always looking for members because we have a lot on our plate, a lot that we want to accomplish through our work on the subcommittee. And so you're welcome to join us on Wednesday, October 6th at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I will send out that information when I send out the PowerPoint and the video from today's presentation. Might not come today, so just bear with me, but you'll definitely get it, if not this week, early next week. But thank you, Tanya, for presenting today, and thank you all for attending. I can tell from the chat that you all gained some grateful knowledge and nuggets of information. And so now we just have to share it with our peers and share the resources with our students.
Yes, and at this next meeting, we will start that task force work again. So we can start working on these activities, hopefully now with all of us having some common knowledge. Okay, have a good rest of your days, everyone. Bye-bye.